Well, from power to water, and there are some grave concerns about water supply to at least two key Joburg hospitals. Helen Joseph and Rahima Moosa are a stone's throw from each other. They're supplied in a similar area. So for the past few weeks, water has been a problem in that area. But of course, it's a broader area as well. And this issue was heightened over the weekend by a power cut. So a crisis for these two hospitals, a real inconvenience for residents in the affected areas. But as we head into the COVID third wave, alarm about what these hospitals will do if there are further water disruptions. I'm joined now by Eddie Singo, Executive Manager of suikerbos Water Treatment Plant for bulk water supplier Rand Water. Now, Rand Water sells water on to Joburg Water, so now you understand the relationship between the two. Mr. Singo, thank you very much for your time. I know that there was a commitment that this water problem would be sorted out by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Could you give us an update? Has it been fixed?
Yeah, good evening, Sally, and good evening to the viewers of eNCA. Indeed, from the Rand Water side, as a bulk water supplier, everything that needed to be fixed, we are done. We currently are running full steam. We on all our pumps that are supposed to supply the areas that had been indicated on Saturday and Sunday are running as they are supposed to run. And of course, the race at the moment is that of ensuring that we replenish the reservoirs. You can understand that we are replenishing reservoirs as consumers are also consuming water. So it is water in, water out. But we have seen a significant improvement on the reservoirs themselves. We just now I came back from one of the reservoirs that was a problem, and when I went there, the operators are happy. It's beginning to build up, and this is the area that supplies the two hospitals that you are talking about. So one is expecting that there should be some improvement.
So are you saying that Helen Joseph and Rahima Moosa, which of course is just very close to each other, are those hospitals receiving water as we speak?
Look, the city of Joburg or Joburg Water would be able to properly respond to that as they are their direct customers.
Sure.
But what can I assure you is that from Rand Water to the reservoirs that supply those hospitals, at least so far, we are happy that there is flow to that area.
Okay.
The challenge that you would have there is that the reservoirs that supply that area are high-lying, as you would expect reservoirs to be, and usually the system must fill up right at the bottom first before your pressure can then push water.
It takes some time. Sure, we understand.
So
could you quickly update us on Chris Hani, what's happening at the hospital there, and the water supply for Chris Hani and that area? Chris Hani Baragwanath.
Again, the city of Joburg should be able to help, but looking at the topography as compared to your Rahima Moosa, that area should be sorted by now. I think it's something that one can follow up, but it is amongst your almost low-lying areas that should be that should have recovered by now. Yes.
All right. So from your side, from Rand Water as the bulk supplier that sells on to Joburg Water, you've done everything to get this sorted out. I just want to ask you for a response. eNCA reported about a week ago that Joburg Water was accusing Rand Water of throttling supply, particularly to the Crosby, Hurstville, Brixton area, which is where those two hospitals are located. Does Rand Water ever throttle supply? Has it throttled supply to those areas?
No, look, Rand Water does throttle supply, but we only throttle supply to those municipalities that owe Rand Water. City of Joburg, if you remember, we have been reporting on municipalities that owe Rand Water. City of Joburg has never been one of those. So there's no reason for Rand Water to throttle Joburg Water. The only time that there could be a reason for a throttle is if the demand exceeds the supply.
All right, because Joburg Water was saying in that, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to clarify. Joburg Water was saying a week ago that there's low inflow coming from Rand Water. So you're saying that wasn't a throttling issue. What was it then?
No, it wasn't a throttling issue. What the engineers, including, fortunately, in the fault-finding exercise that we went through, Joburg Water was part of that. So we went through, we could not find anything from our side, and the exercise is still on. We are still also looking at the Joburg Water side. We haven't stopped even looking from the side of Rand Water to see if there's anything that can be.
You're still trying to work out what the problems are. I want to ask if you could, and I know there are multiple challenges that you've been dealing with, but one thing we know is that when there's load shedding and extended power cuts, that affects the ability to pump water to the areas it needs to go. And I think that's one of the problems that we saw over the weekend. So I want to ask you, bearing in mind that we're looking at more and more load shedding, are you confident that you're able to fix the problem and make sure that we're not going to be sitting in a situation in the heart of the third wave with hospitals not getting the water they need because you haven't managed to figure out what the problem is?
No, I think let's correct this one. The problem that happened on Saturday had absolutely nothing to do with load shedding. It was just a failure of infrastructure in terms of the transformers themselves. When we are load shed, we are amongst the last ones to be load shed. So every time you hear that Eskom or the city is load shedding, we become the last ones. I think let's give it to them. They do not load shed us as they would the residents.
Okay. That makes sense. Yes, sorry, just finish that thought. Yes.
Yeah, for future, we are hoping that the issues that have been identified at that substation or those transformers that are supplying as Eikenhof, we believe that if we implement what has been identified, we shouldn't have a challenge.
All right.
The boosters that are boosting right up to Hurst Hill and the Brixton areas, as we speak, we boost that water directly from Eikenhof right to that reservoir, which then is safe from load shedding.
I tell you what the fear is. You mentioned that there was an infrastructure problem, and we know that the water boards are dealing with aging infrastructure. We know there's a similar problem with the electricity system, and I think the fear for many Joburgers, and I think anyone around the country who sees these ongoing water problems, is that the infrastructure around water and power is crumbling bit by bit. The two are very interdependent, and we can see real problems ahead, particularly around our hospitals, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. And I suppose what I'm asking from you is some reassurance that you guys have got a plan to stop this becoming an absolute calamity.
No. From Rand Water, Sally, we will give you our assurance that we have done our homework. You remember, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, we reported to the public that our Vision 2025 has actually taken into consideration the increase and all these other challenges related to the demand. And we are hard at it. One, in terms of replacing the infrastructure that we've identified to be old, such as pipes, such as transformers, hard at it, and even increasing our storage capacities using reservoirs. So we can assure the public that our infrastructure is not at a level where you should be doubting. But of course, the purification and pumping of water is energy intensive. So for us to be able to pump to anyone else, we need Eskom, as it supplies one of our pumps to be available, we need the city power to be available, we need Ecorelate. So we need all of these electricity suppliers to be available so that we can be able to run our pumps. So on that score, we are satisfied that when there is load shedding, at least we are safe. But when there's no power, unfortunately, we then stop our pumping and until we get supplied. Of course, on our tertiary plants, those being very small, we've got standby generators such that if there's load shedding or there's loss of power, we are able to then bring those into commission, and then they keep the plants running. If you look at our secondary and tertiary plants, which is a Vernaching and suikerbos water treatment plant, Palmit, Aiken of Mapleton, and suikerbos. Those are huge plants.
Yeah.
Those are plants that you can't buy enough generators to really run the whole plant, and therefore you then depend on electricity from our suppliers.
Thank you so much for that reassurance and also for explaining that interdependency between water and power, and how extended outages can really have an impact, even though the water infrastructure, they try and make sure it's not impacted. Inevitably, it happens. Problems of ailing infrastructure, but an assurance there from Eddie Singo, Executive Manager at Rand Water, that from their part as bulk suppliers, they have done everything they can to fix those problems that we've seen in and around Johannesburg.